If your dog coat is sliding up towards the front legs and bunching in the chest area when they move, sizing up is not going to fix it because it's not a sizing problem, it's a shape problem. Tight spots steal fabrics. I think this is really going to help explain when you are looking at a dog coat or a pattern, and sometimes it fits a dog and sometimes it doesn't. And the real key message that I'm trying to get across here today is showing where the shape of the chest and where it sits on the front legs of the dog. We're going to be looking at three different dogs here. The French Bulldog, the second dog in the center is an English Bulldog, and the third dog is a Doberman Pinscher. But I don't want you to get caught up in the breeds themselves. I just want you to look at the shape of the dog, because that's the key. As we know, there are a million of different kinds of mixed breeds out there. So really the point is to be looking at the shape here, not the breed. So they look like three separate, completely different sized dogs, and you would think, okay, I'm going to get three totally different patterns for these dogs. But what I want to show you here is that the chest circumference is actually the same on both of the English Bulldog and the Doberman Pinscher. So sometimes, even though the dogs look completely different, sometimes you can have a same chest circumference. One of the key measurements people always tell you to take is that chest circumference. But as you can see here, that chest circumference, if that's the only measurement or one of the key measurements that you're relying on in order to get your dog's pattern size, then it could be really different on how that pattern fits the dog. So I want to show you these same three dogs from the front. As you can see, the French Bulldog has a fairly, comparatively to the other dogs, there's a big difference in that chest width area. They're all very different, but what I want to show you here is the chest drop. So if you look at where the bottom of the neck starts and down to where the bottom of the chest is, that chest drop between the French Bulldog is actually the same as the chest drop in the English Bulldog. And then if we look at this Doberman Pinscher, you can see that, like with a dog that has a really deep chest, that drop from the chin down to the bottom of the chest is really, really long. So that's a key thing that you really want to kind of measure for and account for when you are making dog coats. One of the measurements that you will often take is the front height. So if we look at these three different dogs, the front height goes from underneath the face of the dog, right around where the collar would normally sit, through the front legs and to the widest point on the chest of the dog. So if we look at the French Bulldog and the English Bulldog, those are actually fairly close. And then once again, because this Doberman Pinscher, or a deep-chested dog, has a very, very long front, that makes a big difference in how that size works within the pattern. And then it's particularly where that position is on the front height, where the legs are sitting. The key here is to figure out where the legs are sitting in relationship to that front height. So as you can see, I've still got those same little arrows showing where the front height measurement is. But what I've added in here is that neck to withers measurement that you take from where the collar normally sits to where the shoulders are on the dog. And when you find those shoulders, you drop straight down, and that's always in behind the front legs on the dog. So you drop down, and where that position crosses the front legs, that tells you where to position the opening for the dog's legs. So where the legs will sit, whether you've got an open coat that just wraps around the belly, or maybe you've got a coat that has actual armholes in it. So figuring out where that position, as I said here on the graphic, figuring out where on that front height the position of those legs sit is really key. So take a look at here, like the difference between where the collar normally sits, and if we go along this thing to where the yellow line joins the front height, those two here on the two different types of bulldogs is quite short if you compare that to this deep-chested Doberman Pinscher. and how long that drop is and how big a difference, where that chest drops and how far down that chest sits in the front in ratio to those front legs. That's really key to making sure that you get a really good fitting coat. So let's take a look at this Doberman Pinscher. So in here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here on the chest area. So as you can see here in this chest area, we've got a lot of tension going on. It's smooth right here on the breastplate of the dog, but it's a lot of these wrinkles. These wrinkles tell you that there's tension. When there's wrinkles, that's a really good sign that things are tight in that area. And again, when there's a tightness, it steals the fabric from other areas. It'll pull that fabric. What I mean by like when I say stealing the fabric, what I mean is that it's pulling fabric from somewhere else in order to make some more room in that area. Let's take a look at the side view of this dog. So when the dog is standing here and we first put the coat on, maybe it's not quite so obvious. The coat seems to fit at the back of the dog. It's got good length on the dog on its back end, but you can already see that there's tension in here. The wrinkles, again, that shows you where the tension is in the coat and where it's really tight. So I also want to show you the same coat on a bulldog. The dog coat here, when you look at it, you can already start to see that there are some wrinkles here. And this is where the tension is. This dog has a very wide stance and the space between its front legs is quite wide as well. So it's really pulling this section of the coat quite tight. So we've got a good graphic here of the dog when it's walking. So number one, you can see that the belt has really slid forward and is starting to impinge in behind those front legs on the dogs. That area there will start to chafe if it's really pushing forward. And then down here on the front, I'm going to zoom in a little bit there. You can start to see that there's some gaping going on here. Everything's being pulled forward because it's tight, and you actually get a little bit of bunching and gaping in the front. And then as you can see up around here, you can see all of these wrinkles that are going on. And again, when there's wrinkles showing, that's your first clue that there's just too much tension going on there. You can see how up here around the belt area, it slid forward. And so again, there's wrinkles up there. So this is all showing you how everything's just starting to bunch forward in the front of the dog coat. And what's happening on the back end here, it's not super obvious in this picture, but as I was saying, this coat can start to slide side to side because the balance is all off. It's all kind of tight up here and it's really loose back here. So what happens is as the dog moves and its whole body's kind of moving side to side, this area here can start slipping side to side on the dog. And lastly, as you might notice, the coat is starting to slide up. So we've got more of the back end is exposed and you're not giving good full coverage to the dog's coat or the dog itself. So what I want to have you kind of think about here is that dog coats patterns are kind of like recipes. Like if you were making sugar cookies, let's say, but you're not a real sweet freak and you needed to adjust the recipe a little bit, you would start to kind of play around with the amount of sugar you put in. But when you change the amount of sugar that goes in, you may have to adjust some other things. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to move to the overhead camera and I'm going to just show you what I would do to address this when I'm working at the pattern level. This is a coat. This is just basically a really simple onesie kind of jacket. These two pieces would be sewn together here. This is the back piece and this is the chest coverage piece. And then these two pieces here would also attach there. So this area is the armhole. This area here is the neck, and this is what a finished coat of this sort would look like. So we've got those armholes like you saw in the pattern. That armhole here is like an armhole here. And the coat sloping going up. We've got these two pieces that attach here. And I don't know if you can see, on the actual pattern or the finished product, but these two pieces are attaching here. So this is kind of what it looks like when it's a finished jacket or coat or shirt or whatever it may be, a onesie, whatever you're creating. And what I would do here for that chest, mostly when you're working with this area, I would be working with this front chest section. There may be some adjustments that you want to do to the back, but what we're talking about here is how do you address that tight chest on the dog. So if we're looking at a really deep chested dog, what I would be doing here is I would be lengthening this portion here. When I was talking about this front height and how you can determine where those legs sit on the pattern, this is the key. So you've got your front height measurement. You measure from where the neck, the collar would normally sit on the dog through the front legs to the widest point on the dog. The other measurement that you want is that neck to withers. So that's the measurement from where the collar would normally sit on, and you're looking at the back of the dog, like where the spine is, and you're going to find those shoulders. And the shoulders you can always find from just drawing an invisible line up from behind those front legs up to where it meets the spine. And you'll normally find a bump there. That's where the shoulders are, and that's where the front legs pivot from. So this is a really key measurement in order to figure out where those front legs sit. What we're looking at, this line here, is that neck to withers. So that's the point from where the neck is on the dog to that invisible line that we draw in from behind the front legs. And as you can see, this is where the front legs would sit, right? That's the armhole opening. If I was trying to make this for that Doberman Pinscher or a very deep-chested dog, I would be wanting to move this line down. It would likely you're going to be moving that along. And then you also need to be moving this whole front height down. So that by positioning this and figuring out where that neck to withers is in comparison to where it sits on this chest piece, that is going to determine where that hole sits. So if I needed to move all of this down because of that really long front height, then this whole arm would need to be repositioned. So I'm not going to go into details about how I would go about doing that. I do have a couple of resources. One is the custom fit toolkit, which I'll put a link down into the description down below. If you really want to start looking at how you go about adjusting patterns, that's a great course because it really goes into the deep details on that. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that I'm actually putting together a new free resource. It's called Why Doesn't My Dog Coat Fit? And it's all about just really simply looking at these kind of measurements and how you would quickly assess why things aren't fitting quite right and how you would deal with that at the pattern level. So I'll be putting some more information about that out soon, but take a look at the description down below and you should be able to find out what I'm talking about. That's how I would deal with it for the Doberman or that deep-chested dog. If we were looking at the Bulldog, we've got a very different situation because this area here, we'd actually be looking at trying to make this much wider. So the difference that we need to deal with here is how do we split this and create that width to address that really wide stance that the dog has on the Bulldog or that barrel-chested dog. So I would be splitting this at the chest area and widening that. When you are increasing the width on this chest piece, you do want to take a look at how is that going to work on the dog's front legs. Because what you don't want to do is be increasing this so much that it's starting to bunch in between their front legs here, because that also creates a lot of discomfort in the dog. There's situations where you actually may need to decrease this. If you had a dog that was very, very narrow in the front, if we go back to that Doberman Pinscher or a deep-chested dog, sometimes the patterns you're looking at are going to be too wide, and you're actually going to want to cut it and then pull these pieces together so that they overlap. So if you're starting to see bunching behind the front legs or sliding forward, or it's pulling across the chest, or it's twisting when your dog moves, don't assume that the pattern is too small. because sizing it up isn't going to make a difference. It isn't going to fix the problem. Sizing it up is going to make it too big in some other areas. So you don't want to be sizing it up, but you do want to be looking at that chest area to make sure that it isn't too tight there. And if it does seem like it's too tight, then that's where you want to be addressing the pattern change, because tight spots always steal fabric. That's just the way it works. So if you've got a coat that is doing this, send me a photo. I love to take a look at different examples that people have problems with. So you can either, I always have my email down in the description below, so you can always send me a photo to the email, or just put a comment down below and we can start chatting about it. I do have a measurement resource, so I'll put that down in the description as well, just to get you started on how to measure your dog if you've never measured before. And if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up and make sure to follow me so you know when I do go live and when my new videos come out. I usually put at least one video out every week or two, so lots of new stuff coming. So make sure you follow me and give me a thumbs up on this one. All right, have a great week. I hope you guys all enjoy. Get back to that sewing machine and start making some patterns that actually fit your dog. All right, talk to you later. Bye.